Hey everybody, it's Guy McDoodfella, one of the co-chairs of the B-Sides Las Vegas Proving Ground track. Our next talk is titled Do You Understand the Words That Are Coming Out of My Mouth? By Shay Jackson, who was mentored by Anna Skelton.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shay Jackson, and today we will discuss the top vulnerabilities to the healthcare industry during the rise of COVID-19. First, I would like to talk about the business impacts not only to the industry but also to our organization. That includes disruption to operations, also financial loss. On average, the recovery of a ransomware attack cost businesses $1.85 million. Also, there are negative effects to patient care and unauthorized access to sensitive data. Not to mention the loss of trust by our clients due to a data leak and also our reputation. Let's talk about our first vulnerability, employees. Whether it's them not having any education at all about information security and how they can protect data, or there not being a strategic plan in place to help them with what measures they can take in order to protect data and also critical infrastructure. As you see by the headlines, there was an increase of 220% phishing attacks during COVID-19. Insider threats continue to be a risk for employers, and also there was concern with as many people working from home, there being potential access to sensitive data. Let's talk about some of the risks to the business. First, we mentioned phishing email. Have you ever got an email or heard about someone getting an email from HR or the IT support and they asked them to click on the link? As soon as they clicked on the link, there was malware that was able to go out through the systems or be able to have unauthorized access to data. That's a phishing email. Or what about if one of the employees checking their personal email on their company laptop, there's a sale, 50% discount. You have to click the coupon right now in order to get it. But once they click it, it leaves the company open to an attack. Look at the data. 3.4 billion phishing emails are sent every day worldwide. Next, insider threats. This is a threat where an employee, a third party vendor, or a business associate in the healthcare industry, or a contractor has authorized access to systems and also data, but intentionally or intentionally, they share the information or have access. There are people that have access to it that may cause harm to the organization. Again, let's look at the numbers. 60% of data breaches are caused by insider threats. And remember, it's not always intentional. There's unintentional as well. That is due to a lack of education to the employees. Lastly, let's talk about ransomware attacks. We've heard about it in the news from the Colonial Pipeline and also the JBS meat industry in the news, and critical, massive harm done. However, a misconception for some small and medium sized practices is that, oh, that would never happen to me. Hackers are focused on large organizations, and that is totally not true. What actually, the actual situation is small and medium sized businesses are considered low hanging fruit because threat actors believe that they may not have the security measures in place or safeguards needed in order to protect their critical infrastructure and also data. Ransomware attacks will occur every 11 seconds in 2021. That means Wow, 11 seconds, billions and trillions, it seemed like over the year. We need to learn how to protect our organization from this type of risk. What are some possible solutions? One big one is having cyber awareness training. Employees are a first line of defense when it comes to protecting the organization, but they may not know how. So, being able to educate them and also train them on what a phishing email looks like, what they can do in order to safeguard the data is one of a critical step, but also a simple one that we can implement in our organization. Another solution is limiting employee access, using least privilege access, which means a receptionist should not have the same level of permissions and also authorities that an IT support would have. All they need to access is the information in order to complete their responsibility and tasks for their positions. Next, let's talk about cloud computing. Wow, 630% of cloud service attacks during COVID-19. There was a rush, obviously, which, if we look at the other headline, could potentially cause a cyber pandemic. Let's look at the risk when using a public cloud. One is having system misconfigurations and also there being flaws in the firewall application. What can this mean? This could mean that we are not abiding by the HIPAA security rule when it comes to risk management, taking the time to do a risk analysis to see what the gaps are, whether it's making sure that something that is public in the parameters are private to ensure that there is not unauthorized access to information for all personnel, only key people. Once they're in the cloud, why not have a system attack? This goes back to what we talked about with ransomware. When there's unauthorized access in the cloud, they're able to not only encrypt the data, but also hack systems. Think about the risk that is involved and also the impact if a patient who is on the way to the hospital, however, the data cannot be accessed and it can be a matter of minutes or seconds, but we have to avert them to another hospital or medical practice because we can't access their information. These are some of the things that can potentially happen when cloud computing is not secure and security measures are not used to ensure that our operating systems and also the data are a focus to make sure that threat actors do not or cannot have access. What are some possible solutions? Cloud security is a huge one. Again, going back to the HIPAA security rule, that's being out of compliance if the standards are not met when it comes to having safety measures, having protection, and also making sure that whatever layers of defense that can be used in order to protect the patient's protected health information and also the systems from cyber attacks are implemented. Also, another solution is using multi-factor authentication. Well, what does that mean, Shay? That means not only are we going to ask them to put in their user ID and password, we're going to use another form of authentication, maybe sending a code to their phone for them to type in the number so that we can for sure, absolutely for sure, guarantee that that person is who they say they are. Lastly, let's talk about connected medical devices. Now, this has been a great revolution and an explosion when it comes to connected medical devices, whether it's insulin pumps, dealing with high blood pressure, or not only external medical devices, but also those that are implanted inside of a patient to get readings, it seems to have improved patient care, but with that improvement, there also are challenges and risks as well. One risk that I would like to discuss is a information security professional being able to hack into his insulin pump. Wow. Now, yes, he was an information security professional, and in your mind, you may think that'll never happen. However, we never thought that a colonial pipeline ransomware attack would happen, right? So just because it seems out of the realm of belief or reality, that doesn't mean it can't happen. Again, making sure that our patients' welfare and security should be our number one priority, even when it comes to medical devices. Let's look at the numbers. There are 5,200 attacks that have occurred with connected devices. Now, in the news, we haven't heard about a patient expiring or there being any type of massive critical issues when it comes to medical devices, whether it has to do with the patient inside of a medical practice or a hospital. However, the possibility is there for a threat actor to have access not only to the patient's information, but let's go back again, like I talked about the insulin pump. Who says that the dosage can't be changed? A dosage change could be the difference between the life and the death of a patient. Another risk is a hacker having access to protected health information. 268,189,693 healthcare records. Let's just take a moment and think about that. Wow, between 2009 to 2020, that's the number of records that was reported as being exposed. However, that's just the tip of the iceberg because, again, that was for reports where there were 400 or more records affected. Think about smaller practices or smaller healthcare delivery organizations that had a exploit and their data was leaked as well. So this number that I just mentioned, the 268,189,693 records that were exposed is actually greater than that. Probably approximately 4 million. That's a lot. That's a lot. And who wants to have their information exposed? And we talked before about the reputation of the organization and also the loss of trust due to a client. Not so much, not just when it comes to maybe their personal identifiable information like their name, their address, maybe their social security number or their credit card information. But what about the medical records? What about critical information that a patient would not want to have shared or exposed on the internet? Ladies and gentlemen, this is how serious this matter is. What are some possible solutions? Inventory management is a key one. You can't protect what you don't know is on your network. It goes back to what I talked about before concerning the HIPAA security rule. The HIPAA security rule and the standards say that you have to do inventory management so that you'll know not just to have a list, but let's dig a little deeper, understanding if there are possible updates or patches that come about that can apply more security to those different devices, but also what if there's a operating system that is no longer supported? That is something that our staff needs to know so that we can set up parameters in order to protect not only our patients, not only the data, but also the systems as well. Security defenses is another solution. That means defense in depth or layered defenses. For instance, we talked about multi-factor authentication. And on top of that, we can add intrusion detection and prevention systems as well. It's just looking at what of all the tools, the resources that we can apply. And it always doesn't mean more money. It can be simply changing something in an application we have to heighten the security. So taking a step back, looking to see not only what applications we have, but also what we can apply at that may be simple or easy to do, an easy fix or easy implementation, and also those that take the minimal amount of effort is massive. That can be taking a proactive stance to apply safeguards to our organizations. I want to again reiterate the business impacts these top three vulnerabilities have had on the healthcare industry: disruption to services and operations, financial loss. I want to tell you the number again. It takes $1.85 million to recover from a ransomware attack. The negative effects it has on patient care, unauthorized access to sensitive data, potential lawsuits as well when a patient finds out that their data was exposed due to the organization or company not having or addressing the safeguards they needed to for potential threats for that particular practice. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for my presentation. Thank you for being on the front row and listening to a meeting. What did I do in this presentation? I talked about top healthcare vulnerabilities. Now, just because, like I mentioned before, my specialty is healthcare security, you can apply these same things or these same points that I did in my presentation to yours as well. I talked about and outlined the risks that came along with these vulnerabilities. I discussed potential impacts to the business, possible solutions that we can implement. I also used non-technical terminology, and when I did use technical jargon, I took a moment to explain what it meant and also give an example. One thing that I would also like to say to make your presentation more effective and impactful during the meeting is find out what the business objectives are, because when talking to stakeholders and all upper management and key personnel, that is what is at the front of their mind. So if you're able to align what vulnerabilities there are, what risks, what safeguards can be used, and apply it to the business objectives, I guarantee you you won't get the glass eye stare, but they will listen more because that's what's important to them. Not just the bottom line, but whatever objectives and goals the business is trying to accomplish. Thank you so much. My name is Shay Jackson. Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth? Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm here with Shay. That was a fantastic presentation and very timely given the current issues we're seeing with ransomware and healthcare providers. So our first question is from Alan. Any guidance on thinking about the medical devices versus the traditional IT side of the healthcare environment? And then he follows up with any thoughts on how or whether to treat them separately for things like scanning and management. And
yes, good question. I think that they should be seen as separate, especially because with medical devices being hooked to patients and the dangers that can come along with that, being able to implement maybe a network segmentation as a safeguard, but also making sure that the healthcare provider or the health delivery organization knows all of the devices on their network. Not only that, but what is the support? Are there any patches that need to be done? Those are some of the I'll say perils that go along with the vulnerabilities when it comes to connected medical devices. Not that IoT devices aren't important, like say for instance a camera or something like that, but patient safety should be number one, because that's a connected devices, medical devices are aligned with patients. They should be seen as different. Thank you for your question.
Oh, sure. And it's really interesting to me, we've had the same basic mitigations, and they're very powerful ones, VLANs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Network
Yes.
segmentation, that's been around for 20 plus years, right?
Yes.
And yet there's so much low-hanging fruit, which I suppose brings me to another question. So when you speak with upper management, especially in a healthcare organization, why does there seem to be such a disconnect between what's happening in the news and the reports of all the ransomware attacks and getting the organization leadership to actually implement a cogent security plan in their organization? Why do you think that is?
Several reasons. Great question again. There are a lot of reasons. Number one, obviously, there is a talent gap when it comes to being able to address those risks and even being able to mitigate them. Another one is being able to talk in their language where upper management understands. And that's why I talked about understanding the business objectives, making it quantitative so that on their language, because sometimes it's easy, because in our mind, we think that even if it's in the news or their words being spoke, that everyone should know that. However, we should not have that mindset. Whenever talking to upper management or stakeholders, take the mindset of you're speaking to someone that's in middle school, and I know that may seem like, what? But honestly, if you're able to just break it down in layman's terms and also connect it to the business objectives and also how it can affect the bottom line, I believe it would be more effective. And a strategic plan can be in place in order to protect the critical infrastructure.
Sure. And so do you suppose, with regards to strategic planning, do you see any differences between large healthcare organizations and these large hospital chains versus rural clinics or community health centers, that might have one or two offices? What sort of differences do you see there?
Kind of the same strategic plan, and I'll talk about a little bit about the HIPAA security rule, because no matter how large or small the health delivery organization, everyone has to abide by the HIPAA security and privacy rule, right? However, there's some things that and I'll use the NIST cybersecurity framework as something that they could use to kind of map the different standards that they have to meet. There's some things that, yes, a large organization may need to address that a solopreneur or a small or even rural medical practice does not have to. So being able to lay everything out, see what you should apply, and also what things you'll say, and it also comes down to their risk appetite and their risk tolerance as well. So again, the HIPAA security rule is the standard for everyone. It's just knowing what safeguards, tools that need to be implemented in order to mitigate risks.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. When I think about HIPAA and high tech, I don't tend to think of it in terms of there being a lot of room for risk appetite and risk profiles.
Yeah.
I tend to think of it more as, thus saith the Lord, you shall do these things and it shall be good.
Right. And
so
a lot of people do.
Can you give us an example of what kind of room is in there? Like, what kind of differing profile do you have?
Yes, great question. So, for instance, let's take phishing. So, let's say, for instance, for a large organization, yes, you would want to have have phishing security services in place. we'll say 50 to 100, even lower than that. But for a solopreneur or a smaller office, let's be honest, if there's a phishing attack, if there's a phishing testing going on, if it's 5 people, pretty soon the employees will be able to talk to each other and tell each other, hey, I got this email, watch out for it. So in this instant, are phishing security services important when it comes to a large delivery or even a medium healthcare delivery organization? Absolutely, because once they click, then we can implement a video or training to help them understand why they shouldn't have clicked on. For a smaller office, they may think in their mind, well, I really don't need this service. However, not doing the phishing test, but being able to educate them about phishing, about social engineering and things of that nature. It wouldn't cost the same amount of money for a small organization as it would a medium, I almost say medical, sorry, medium or large organization. Still very important. However, they will look at it different. Also, when it comes to least privilege as well, you're looking at a large organization. There are many different employees. Yes, we do need to make sure that a receptionist, like I mentioned, doesn't have to have the same permissions as someone in IT. But for a smaller office, if it's just a doctor and an assistant, or maybe a receptionist as well, definitely still need to have that security in place, but it wouldn't take as much time, or as far as the rules are concerned, as more in depth as it would for a middle or large delivery organization.
Sure. So you talked about PHI and medical records. Mm-hmm. I know that there's one of the things that has happened in the last 10 to 15 years is the digitization of medical records. Yes. And I used to live in Madison, Wisconsin, which is home to Epic, which is one of the larger companies that provides PHI and digital health records.
Yes.
Do you see any gaps in what those companies are providing, especially with their managed products?
Yes, I do. And it's difficult, I think, because when you think of applications, it's always as technology advances, we want more consumers, and you address the consumers. However, sometimes that security DevOps is not implemented, so having those gaps are there. But one thing, as far as the organization is concerned, just because, like you mentioned, Epic, they may say that they're HIPAA compliant, there are things that the organization needs to do to ensure that their patients are protected. And that's something that, as we talked about before, there's a disconnect, because it's, I have this application, I'm great, they have HIPAA compliance, they have some security rules in place, then I'm fine, but that's not true. But again, it comes to who's going to do that. Whose role is it? Do we have someone, even the HIPAA security or privacy officer, which sometimes is the same person, depending on the size of the practice? Who's responsible for that? Who can do it? Who has the bandwidth to do it? So as we see more exploits, as we see more ransomware attacks, that's great that we're saying, yes, we need a solution, but we also know that we need to start training and gearing up more professionals that can help meet those needs.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's very true with most of the other cloud and hybrid stuff that we've seen, right? It's not just enough to pay the invoice. You also have to verify that they're doing the job.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we've got a couple seconds left. Is there anything you'd like to close with? Any words you'd like to leave with the audience?
I do. One thing that I want to say, as far as, and we talked about the size of the practice, small and medium medical practices are considered low-hanging fruit, because they believe that, we're not a Baylor Scott and White, which is a large hospital in Texas, or one of the larger organizations. So no one will be really looking at us, and we don't have to really have as many safeguards, which isn't true, because you are the low-hanging fruit, and because you're connected to the network, you're the easy way in. So when it comes to thinking about implementing security practices, don't always think what you hear in the news is about the larger organizations. Small and medium-sized businesses are a prime victim as well, and unfortunately, whenever they are attacked, they're not able to, because of how much money it costs in order to, I want to say come back, but I'll recover. Most of them go out of businesses within 6 months.
That's unfortunate. Well, thank you very much, Shay. I think that's our time.
Thank you.
So thank you for the fantastic talk. And just a reminder to our viewers, you can keep asking questions in the Discord channel all day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.